Bought my boyfriend a vintage Tolkien book set, missing The Hobbit and with disturbingly yellow pages, and now I'm stuck with it. I'm not really a Tolkien fan. Not because I don't respect his legendary work, he absolutely deserves all the praise he gets, but fantasy novels just aren't my thing. My boyfriend, on the other hand, is head over heels for Tolkien. I love that about him, and honestly, I'd spoil him rotten if I could. So, picture me wandering through this little vintage store when I stumble upon a book set that I've never seen before. Not in any used bookstore I've scoured. My nerves kick in, and naturally, I want to investigate before taking the plunge. But, as luck would have it, my phone has 0 bars in this tiny town. I even tried to walk a couple blocks away, desperately waving my phone around for a glimmer of service to rescue me. Nothing. Finally, I decided to just go for it, braving the unknown. The book set was sealed tight in saran wrap. They wouldn't let me open it to examine the insides. I get it, rules are rules, but the suspense was killing me. I shelled out $50, more than I should have spent, considering my pathetic barista budget lately, and hurried home, giddy to surprise my boyfriend. Unwrapping it at home, my heart sank. The pages looked like they'd been soaking up nicotine and sunlight for decades, yellow, almost brown. I mean, traumatizingly yellow. Surely, it couldn't get worse. Except it did. The moment I had cell service again, I finally looked up the set. That's when devastation set in. It was missing an entire book. Just to add salt to the wound, it was The Hobbit. I felt so stupid, embarrassed, and actually started to cry. There were no returns at the vintage store, so that $50 was gone for good. I just kept thinking about my boyfriend, how much love and care he puts into his books. He never dog-ears a page, gently repairs any tear, arranges them obsessively on his shelves. I really wanted to hit a home run with this gift, and instead I ended up mortified and broke. I confessed to him that I bought him a gift that turned out to be a total flop, swearing I'd never reveal what it was, ever. I'm keeping that vow, but now I'm just stuck with this incomplete, battered, embarrassingly yellow set. Is it a crime against Tolkien if I repurpose it into art? I do collage work, and I started brainstorming ways to maybe use the text or the covers to make something special for him someday. Should I just try to sell it for pennies? Or toss it on a street corner for free? Burn it? Okay, I'd never go that far, but the disappointment is real. Honestly, with how snug that shell the books came in fit, I never even imagined a book was missing. My thumb barely fit in the gaps, so the idea that The Hobbit should have been there never crossed my mind. God, I feel so dumb. Update 1. This morning, I checked the spine of the book set, and despite holding on to some optimism, I realized with absolute certainty, The Hobbit really should have been included in this collection. The moment I saw it missing, all those feelings from a few months ago came rushing back. I remembered exactly why I doom spiraled so hard after I first bought the set. It stung a little more than I expected, even now. Still, I've decided I'm going to power through and be a good sport about it. The set is going to be a gift for my boyfriend, as I'd planned. He'll love it, even if it's not quite as perfect as I'd imagined. But honestly, there's a very strong chance I'll end up accepting that kind offer from Overhill Underhill to send me a copy of The Hobbit, after all. That missing book is haunting me, but maybe, just maybe, things will work out in the end. Update 2. I took a risk last Christmas and bought my boyfriend a Tolkien book set from a vintage shop. In my excitement, I didn't even try to do research before purchasing, but I thought he'd love it. Turns out, I epically failed in more ways than one. The edges of the pages weren't just vintage yellow, but a deep, almost chainsmoker hue, and, worst of all, The Hobbit was missing from the set. After my initial panic settled, things started to get even more interesting. I started digging, hoping maybe I hadn't made as big of a blunder as I thought. Some folks pointed out that maybe my set was never supposed to include The Hobbit in the first place, despite what the slipcase said. I almost let myself believe I hadn't totally messed up. But then the truth showed up in a far juicier twist. I learned from collectors who own this very set, brand new or nearly so, that it did originally come with all 4 books, including The Hobbit, and that all 4 books could fit in the slipcase, but only until you dared to actually open and read them. Apparently, once read, the spines and pages expand, and suddenly they barely fit back in the case at all. I realized it made perfect sense why so many of these sets floating around are missing The Hobbit. It's the perfect candidate to get separated. About those page edges, some suggested I was overreacting, that vintage books just yellow with age, but if you saw them, I promise you'd understand my initial panic. I've loved old books all my life but rarely seen pages this yellow without serious damage. But then, a few collectors swooped in with a crucial detail. Even when the set was new, the page edges were intentionally color-stained yellow by the publisher. That finally put my worries to rest. But none of that is really why I have to share what happened next, because what came next swung my whole story from a cringe-worthy gift fail into something truly heartwarming. Someone reached out to me after reading about my boyfriend, about how much Tolkien means to him, about my wish to give him something special, how my good intentions collided with financial reality on my barista income, and how I ended up with a flawed and incomplete gift. And this amazing person not only sent me the missing copy of The Hobbit for my 1973 set, but also packed in some absolutely jaw-dropping surprises I could never have dreamed of affording for my boyfriend. He sent everything for free. He wouldn't even let me pay for shipping. When the boxes arrived, I had no idea what would be inside beyond the Hobbit, but as I unpacked the rest of his gifts, I broke down and sobbed. And that hardly ever happens for happy reasons. Every single item, save for my original 1973 set and slipcase, came from his incredible generosity. Among them was a print signed by Andy Serkis, a detail I still can't wrap my head around, and I know for a fact is going to melt my boyfriend's brain when he sees it. I've already thanked this incredible human privately, but even here, it feels impossible to fully put into words what his gesture meant to me, what it will mean to my boyfriend. These new treasures are going to be cherished forever. Looking back, I'm actually grateful for all the twists and turns and encouragement I got to just embrace the flaws in the set and give it anyway. Now, instead of feeling sad about giving so little for Christmas this year, I'm bubbling with anticipation. My boyfriend is going to know instantly, just from the sheer number and quality of presents under the tree, that there's no way I could have bought all this myself. What he doesn't know is just how much lore and community are wrapped up in these gifts, a true saga, with plot twists and all. He agreed to avoid Reddit and any temptation to peek at the story, just in case he stumbled upon it, until after Christmas, because at the very least I had to tell him that the gifts came together thanks to an epic act of community kindness. Now for the first time in years, I actually can't wait for Christmas morning, to see his face, to hand him these incredible gifts, and to finally let him in on this whole adventure by letting him read the whole unfolding story for himself. Merry Christmas to everyone. Sometimes the plot twists really do make it all worthwhile. Update 3. Christmas morning did something to the air in our apartment. It felt thicker, like time was syrup. Like the second I handed him the slipcase, the room became very quiet in that way people talk about right before an orchestra starts. He didn't rip anything. Of course he didn't. He slid the paper off like it was a skin graft, held the case at eye level, and actually laughed when he saw the yellow dyed page edges. I swear I watched a decade of his careful book personality form in real time on his face. He touched the spines with just his fingertips, so gently, and then he did something I didn't expect at all. He put the whole set in his lap, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath in. "God, it smells right," he said. And somehow that sentence knocked me sideways. I told him there was more before he could manage to open anything, and when he pulled the small flat package out and saw the Serkis signature, he just folded, sat back on his heels on the rug and covered his mouth with the print still in his hands and shook with that slow silent laugh that means a person is overwhelmed, the kind that ends in damp eyes whether you want it to or not. Then he pressed the corner of the frame to his forehead like he was knighting himself. "You're kidding," he kept saying, like a mantra. We didn't talk for a while after that. He opened The Hobbit last, and when he read the first line out loud to me he did a voice, not Gollum, not Gandalf, just his own voice softened, careful. I didn't cry and then, suddenly, I did. We lived in the glow for days. He rearranged his shelves at 1 in the morning like he was playing a game of Tetris with his heart. He found a little rip on the inside back cover of Two Towers and repaired it with this archival tape I didn't even know he owned. He propped the Serkis print on the mantle until we could find a proper frame. We made tea that actually tasted like something from a book, smoky, ridiculous, and he read to me while I stitched a button back on a coat. Small old world things. We kept saying this is too much and meaning this is exactly enough. And then, because apparently the universe had more sense of humor to burn, we went back to that same vintage shop to hunt for a frame. We didn't even walk in together. He went to the back where the picture frames live, and I drifted toward the paperbacks, reflex, a homing signal. On a low shelf, half collapsed between romance paperbacks and a Tom Clancy, there it was. The yellow edge. Like a beacon. Same era, same Valentine spine, same little price font on the back. The Hobbit. I picked it up and my brain did that staticky thing where everything slows down. He found me holding it like it was a bird, and before I could even say anything he took the slipcase out of the tote bag we'd brought for frames, because of course we bring tote bags for frames, and we tried it right there on the shop floor. That strange, satisfying resistance as it slid home. It fit like it had been waiting. I don't believe in fate, not in any way that makes sense, but we stood in a thrift store on a Wednesday, looking at each other over cardboard and yellowed paper, and something old in me perked up and said, "Oh, fine, today I do." The woman at the register charged us $3.50 with a little holiday discount she hadn't taken down yet. I didn't know whether to laugh or explain the entire epic to her, so I just paid and said, "Thank you," like I was picking up milk. We wrote to the person who sent the first Hobbit and told him what happened. I half expected him to tell us to mail his back. He didn't. He said something perfect instead. He said books find their people, and he was glad one had found us twice. So we took him at his word. There's a kid I make hot chocolate for sometimes, one of those hyper-observant 13-year-olds who asked me once why dragons always hoard gold and not books. He's getting the other copy this week. I thought my heart would ache letting it go, but watching my boyfriend wrap it up, using the nice paper, writing there and back again on the tag, I felt that same quiet click I felt when the missing one slid into our slipcase. Like everything was being put where it belonged. There was one more tiny, impossible thing. When we finally sat down and really looked through the reunited set, we found a note pressed flat in the fellowship. A rectangle of brittle receipt paper used as a bookmark, hand-dated December 24, 1974, with a little drawing in blue ballpoint of a Hobbit door. For winter reading, it said, in neat cursive. No name. I want to believe the person who drew it would be pleased that winter found their books again, that the door found somebody else to open for. I told him the whole story after that, all of it, every twist and shake of my hands and walk around the block and panic inside a tiny town with no service. He put his hand on the slipcase like it was warm. He didn't say you shouldn't have. He said you did. Which is better than any apology I thought I owed him. I don't know what you call it when a gift stops being just a thing and becomes a little piece of family. Maybe that's too big a word, but I keep catching him running a thumb along the top of the spines when he walks past, like the way people touch photos. He asked if we could read a chapter every night until we're through, and then start again with the next. That's our plan now. Yellow edges, careful hands. A set that finally fits. And a Hobbit that managed to find us twice. Update 4. We found the frame like you find a line stuck to the back of your teeth, by accident and suddenly necessary. Walnut, a little dinged, real glass with that slight waviness that makes everything look like it's underwater by a memory. It wasn't waiting on a wall, it was leaning in a corner under a stack of larger frames like a shy kid in a class photo. He lifted it and the two of us did that quiet calculus couples do, measuring with our eyes, measuring with our hands, before we even checked the price tag. It was right. It felt right. We took it home wrapped in yesterday's local paper that made our hands gray. The circus print went face down on a dish towel. He cleaned the glass with the care of a person detailing an antique car and I held the corners and tried not to breathe on anything. The brown paper backing was brittle as creme brulee, and when he slid a butter knife along the seam it flaked in these soft, almost polite curls. Under the backing, under a layer of cardboard that had a ghost of an old water stain in the shape of a county, there was, of course there was, something else. A thin black and white photograph, scalloped edges, 4 people around a coffee table, the same Valentine spines in front of them like a parade. A lamp throwing down a circle of light that hit one man's glasses and turned them to coins. On the back, in that neat 70s cursive, winter reading, River Street 75, a tiny Hobbit door drawn in blue ballpoint in the corner. The same door as the receipt. The same careful hand. I looked at him and he looked at me and everything in my chest did that warm, slow click like it was agreeing with something older than I am. We walked back to the vintage shop because it felt rude not to. I brought the photograph like you bring a casserole to a neighbor's porch, held flat between my palms. The owner, Kathy with the braid and the bracelets that sound like wind chimes when she reaches for high shelves, squinted and then lit up. Oh, those, she said. All from the Larkin house, River Street, the estate. There's still a box of ephemera. She said it the way people say leftovers. She ducked under the counter and hauled out a sweater box that smelled faintly of winter coats and eucalyptus. Inside, a folded mimeograph of a hand-typed reading schedule, Tuesdays, 7 p.m., bring cookies if you can, a library card stamped with a rubber stamp that said Bag End Book Club like a joke that stuck, a manila envelope with sketches, careful little trees, a doorway, someone had drawn the kettle from their own kitchen and labeled it the Kettle of Rohan, which nearly killed me with affection. And at the bottom, wrapped in a yellowing grocery bag with green apples marching along the side, a cassette tape. Clear plastic, a white label with pencil writing. Tuesday, Bag End, Side A. He made a sound like somebody does when they see the ocean after years inland. Kathy waved her hand in a take-it way that made me add a ceramic owl to our bill out of gratitude. We don't own a cassette player. It turns out our 13-year-old hot chocolate philosopher does. He showed up like a summoned thing, clattering up the stairs with a Walkman he swore was his mom's from high school, batteries, rattling in the case, a pair of foam headphones that looked medically unsound. We thieved the aux cable from our speakers and did a small amount of witchcraft with adapters until the living room speakers exhaled a hiss like a sleeping radiator. The tape began with a clunk I felt in my teeth. A room breathed itself into our room. Teacups clinking. A chair leg protesting. Someone shushing as a joke. And then a woman's voice, not British, not theatrically anything, just warm and sure. For winter reading, she said, and something in me broke in the best way, like a seal on a jar. She started, the words we know, and it felt like the book was reading itself to us across a 49-year hallway. People laughed in the places we laugh now. A man cleared his throat before trying a dwarf voice and failed, and they loved him for it. Somebody's kettle screamed and they all groaned like a chorus and you could hear the couch springs when they shifted. The kid sat on the rug, knees to chest, face tilted up at the speaker like sun. We listened until the tape ran out and the reel kept going, that soft mechanical insistence of a thing trying to do more than it has. He rewound with a pencil because of course he knew how. He held the tape like a bird while he did it. We didn't speak for a while. The room was fat with other rooms. He had that look he gets when he's repairing a tear in a dust jacket, focused, reverent, happy in a quiet way like, sleep. We didn't record over it, of course we didn't. We don't even own blank cassettes, which feels like a sentence from an archaeological dig. But we did what we could do. He got out the nice paper and his good pen and copied the schedule from the mimeograph, adding 2025 in his careful print, and wrote our names in the margin with a little note that said still Tuesdays, still T. I drew the same Hobbit door, my hand shaking with the want to get it exactly like hers. We slid our note behind the circus print, gently, so the backing holds it flat, another layer in that stack pretending to be just a frame. We decided our voices could live on my phone for now, however unromantic that is, and after we read that night we sat our phones face down and just let what had happened settle. It kept happening anyway. The kid took the borrowed Hobbit to school wrapped in leftover nice paper because my boyfriend refuses to compromise on the experience of opening even when the recipient is 13 and constantly sticky. He came back 2 days later with a photo on his phone of 4 kids crammed around a cafeteria table, elbows in ketchup, one of them reading out loud with a face as serious as a judge. The caption was one word: club. I didn't know you could feel proud and relieved and ancient and brand new all at once, but apparently that's a thing bodies can do. We took the photograph from the frame, made a copy on the scanner at the library that my boyfriend says smells like school in the 70s, and then put the original back where we found it because that felt like the right geometry. We tucked the mimeograph schedule in the slipcase with the others. The tape sits on the mantle for now, not because we don't trust ourselves not to misplace it, well, also because of that, but because I like the way it looks there, a small clear brick with a voice inside. Tonight will be Tuesday, our kettle will sing and our radiator will breathe and he'll clear his throat before a voice he shouldn't try anyway. I will draw the little door again in the margin of a grocery list because I can't stop. There's a sentence I keep repeating to myself that I don't know who wrote first: books find their people. Sometimes they even find their Tuesdays. Update 5. It was supposed to be a regular Tuesday, the kind you can point to on a calendar and it doesn't blink. The kettle did what kettles do. He was mending a split hinge on a library discard he'd rescued and I was trying to decide if a grocery list counts as writing when the phone rang in that old-fashioned way that makes you feel like news is walking toward you wearing boots. It was Kathy from the shop. Her bracelets were wind chimes even over the phone. "You're going to want to see this," she said, and added, apologetic but delighted, "River Street again." We went the way people go back to a place they've started to call a story. The house wasn't on fire or gone or anything cinematic, it was just being worked on, ladder leaned like a jointed leg, plastic over a window making a restless, breathy sound. On the lawn, a contractor had built a neat pyramid of things that used to live indoors and now were negotiating their status with the outside. A box we've learned to recognize, the same grocery bag apples marching along the side, brittle, sweet-smelling in that way of clean attics. Nobody yelled when we leaned over the tape line and peered in. The top layer was nothing, holiday lights with one eye dead in every strand, a handful of clothespins like sleepy birds, but under that, it was their handwriting again. Blue ballpoint, the tidy, hopeful loops. A stack of index cards rubber banded together, the top one labeled cookies, bring if you can, and then a thinner case than the cassette from the sweater box but kin to it, white label, graphite handwriting that looked like it had been sharpened to itself. Bag end, Tuesdays, side B. I didn't know if we were allowed to be the kind of people who cry at a curb, but I guess we were, because we did, a little and not embarrassingly. There was a guy on the porch in a paint-speckled sweatshirt who nodded the permission you need from strangers to make a memory. "You're the ones who like the tape," he said, which made me laugh because that's like saying someone liked air. He told us to take whatever feels like it belongs, and I had the immediate, childish impulse to reach for the house. We took the cards and the tape and a little battered tin that told the truth about itself when we opened it. Cinnamon, brown sugar stuck in the seam, somebody's long ago clove-heavy attempt at gingerbread turned into a scent fossil. The kid showed up with the Walkman like he has a sixth sense now, or a pact with our Tuesdays. He didn't even pretend to do homework first. We arranged the cards like tarot and fed the tape into the hungry little machine, and I swear the room prepared itself, radiator sighing, steam in the kettle like a throat clearing. It was side B, but it wasn't just more of the same, it was after. "Reading resumes," the warm woman said, almost laughing because somebody must have knocked something over, and then there were new voices we hadn't met yet. A man who came late, apologizing for the snow in his boots. The page they were on, we found it later, he'd taken a careful pencil dot in the margin decades ago, just a soft touch that told the truth of where it hurt him, where it helped. In the middle of a dwarf joke that didn't quite land, there was a sound I haven't heard on a tape in years, phone interference, a little insecty buzz, and someone in that other room said, "Leave it, we're all here," like they needed to make sure the universe was taking attendance. We listened until it clicked off again in that polite way analog things have when they're out of time. The index cards were better than recipes. They were instructions for being together. Hazel's seed cake, less sugar, Gil thinks it's better that way. Cookie press broke, we pretended they were meant to be rustic. Kettle scandal, handle loose again, do not pour without a towel. On the back of the last card, a phone number in that old style grouping with a little dot in the middle instead of a hyphen and the name Hazel next to it. I didn't expect anything from it. Numbers age like people do, stubbornly and then suddenly. But there it was, still in service, somehow, or rerouted, or blessed by the small, fussy gods of telecommunications. A woman answered with a hello that sounded like she'd put down flour-dusted hands. When I said River Street, her inhale made a whole era lean toward us. We brought the cassette and the tin and the cards and the photograph with the scalloped edges and she brought herself, which turned out to be the rarest thing you can bring. She wasn't the voice on the tape, she told us that first, not with jealousy but with that soft reverence you have for the one who started things. June was the reader, she said. I was the baker in the drawer of doors. She said it like a resume she was proud of. Hazel Larkin. The Larkin house. Which we should have guessed but didn't, because sometimes you need to be told the obvious by the person who holds it. She lives in a sunny little apartment built around a round table that had a low trench worn into it where 100 mugs must have landed. She put both hands on the cassette like she was blessing it. We played it, and she sat with her eyes closed and one knuckle pressed to the hinge of her jaw, smiling that private way people smile when something that used to be theirs comes back wearing a coat of dust. When June's voice said for winter reading on our speakers in our not old apartment, Hazel said, "Oh, Junie," in exactly the tone you want your best friend to say your name in, and then she did something nobody had done for us yet. She told us there last night. It wasn't tragic, it wasn't movie sad, it just ended the way seasons do. Spring came rudely, all at once, she said. We were halfway through a chapter and someone pointed out the first ant on the windowsill and we laughed and got our coats and promised to come back after the garden got ahead of us. The Tuesday after that they met on a porch instead and June read something else, a poem, she thought, about a lawn. They got scattered by good things and errands and babies and a job out of state and then it was never winter enough to pull them back. I kept the kettle, she said, as if she was confessing to holding on to a minor relic she had no right to. It was the kettle from the sketch, the one labeled in pencil the kettle of Rohan, only in 3 dimensions and bearing scars. The handle had been repaired with wire and hopeful glue at least twice. The spout was a little bird's beak. She made us tea in it because she refused to stop using it, and I wanted to applaud the argument that made. We invited her to Tuesday. It felt too big to ask and too small not to. She came wearing a scarf that could have been from any year because wool is time-proof. The kid was there and so were 2 of his cafeteria friends who sat like cats at the edge of whatever was happening, pretend bored and electric. Our building did the thing old buildings do in weather, where they take sides. Half the street lost power and our half didn't until it did, suddenly, right at the sentence where the dwarves are listing something in a way that children always love and adults pretend not to. The room collapsed into itself and then puffed out again around a candle. Somebody at the back went ooh reflexively like a ghost. I lit the second candle with the first candle because that felt ceremonial. We didn't try to fix the outage. We did what you do when a thing is told what it is by circumstance. We kept going. Hazel Reed. Her voice is what you get if warmth decided to have a spine. The kettle shrieked its little battle cry and everybody laughed at the exact same time, which is one of those moments that makes you think humans aren't hopeless. The cassette on the mantel kept being a clear brick with a voice inside. The kid sat closer to the rug than chairs, and at one point I caught him mouthing along to a line like a hymn. Outside, someone down the block shouted about a fuse like a person in a play. When the power came back, it did it apologetically, one lamp at a time. We didn't stand up until we finished the chapter. Hazel touched the circus print without commenting on it like a person who knows that not everything needs to be narrated to be properly seen. She brought the index cards and slid her favorite across to me, seed cake, and wrote next to the recipe, in that careful hand, Junie said use more anise. She was wrong, but I loved her anyway. She copied the Hobbit door from 1974 on the corner of our new Tuesday schedule without looking at the one we'd done, her hand just remembered itself. Before she left, she did one more impossible, ordinary thing. She took from her coat pocket a brass doorknob with a round backplate, old, unshowy, the kind that feels like it has a pulse. It's from River Street, she said, and for a second I thought I'd misheard because that place feels made of air and stories now. Back bedroom, she said. June called it the round door even though it was nothing of the kind. I took it when they sold the house because I was young enough to think you could hold on to a person by holding on to the thing their hand touched most. I don't need to do that anymore. She put it in my boyfriend's palm and something in his face changed, softened in a way I don't have the right verbs for, and he did what he always does when it matters. He touched it like paper. We mounted it next to the mantel at hand height in a way that would make a contractor suck their teeth but made our whole wall feel like a door. People touched it when they came in without being told to. Even the kid did it. He's 13 and allergic to obvious sentiment and he still did it every time. I took a picture of our Tuesday without trying to stage it. Candle scorch on a plate, the kettle catching the light like something newly invented, the circle of faces, and Hazel's hand midair like she's conducting. We printed it at the library on the weirdly good machine that makes everything look like a magazine and slid it behind the circus print with the others. When we pulled the brown paper back over the frame, it made that soft sound dry things make, a sigh like punctuation. Before she left, Hazel stood with her palm on the slipcase. She didn't say you shouldn't have and she didn't say I'm sorry it took this long. She said it kept going, and I realized that's all we've been trying to do, us and the books and the kettle and the cards and the tape and the kid and the winter and the part of the house that now lives on our wall shaped like a small, round permission. It's still Tuesday. It keeps being Tuesday. We keep reading the same lines and they keep being new. I keep drawing the little door in the margins of unimportant papers, and on River Street there is one less thing in a box pretending to be trash. The rest is here, living like a lamp in a storm, quiet, unshowy, stubbornly on. Update 6. We were halfway through washing the kettle like it was a newborn, his hands cupped around the dent in the belly, mine minding the wire-wrapped handle, when the contractor from River Street called. He has one of those voices that sounds like a pencil stub, practical and a little smudged. "You're the Tuesday people?" he said, which is somehow a better title than anything else I'll ever have. "We're buttoned up for the week. You want the house for an hour? I didn't know you could borrow a house like a library book. We packed the kettle and the cassette like you pack a picnic for a ghost." Hazel wore her scarf that's all seasons at once. The kid brought his Walkman and a thermos the size of an organ pipe. We brought the doorknob too, unscrewed from our wall with the care you give something that's become a heartbeat. River Street in winter looks like a diagram of weather, plastic sheeting breathing, studs showing their bones, footprints telling truths in dust. The living room was more sky than inside, with the window out and a pane leaned like a mirror against the wall. You could smell the old pine, the new cut, the last 10 years of people going will get to it. We set up our little camp stupidly reverent, a folding table for the kettle, old blankets over milk crates, the tape player on a windowsill that still remembered a plant. We held the doorknob to the empty circle where its twin had once lived. He pressed it there like a coin on a rubbing and I swear the room leaned closer. "An hour," the guy had said, but the minute we started it stopped being clock time. Hazel said for winter reading and the house said yes in its own language, the plastic whispering, the radiator piped down and the floor thunking as if something small had just agreed. It was like reading inside a throat. The kettle shrieked and the sound went up into the open studs and came down changed, like it had learned the shape of the place and approved. The kid sat on the floor with his back against a beam and the beam held him like a very patient relative. Halfway through a paragraph, a draft found something loose and the loose thing admitted it. A slat in the baseboard lifted its eyelid. Not dramatic, nothing ever is in real life until you tell it later, but enough to make a pale inch of paper think about escaping. He put his book open face down like a sleeping bird and went for his little screwdriver like a surgeon to an old friend. We unzipped 30 years of paint with that slow careful pride that is almost a prayer. Behind the cosmetic lie was a much older truth, a narrow, cold pocket between wall and world, and in it a folded thing, brittle enough to make you want to breathe for it. Hazel did that thing with both hands you do when something could be a letter or could be dust. It was both. The top layer flaked like snow when you touch a windowsill after a long time, but the center held. Blue ballpoint. The door drawn the same way. "If you're reading, we're still here," it said. "Borrow the kettle. Take off your boots. Don't argue about the dwarves, everyone gets at least one. The handle will be loose again, use the towel. If the power goes, light the candle. If somebody new knocks, leave room on the couch." For winter reading. The H in handle had the little flourish Hazel gives it without knowing she does. The signature wasn't a name, it was the same tiny door in the corner and a date we know how to wear now. There was a list of first names with little dots next to some of them, like attendance, like somebody couldn't make it and somebody else brought cookies on their behalf. Next to June was a tiny star. We didn't perform grief. There wasn't a cue for it. We just put the letter on the window ledge with the tape and let them look at each other across what they'd done, and then we went on like instructed. We read until our breath showed, and our breath did that trick where it looks like speech even when you're quiet. When Hazel took the doorknob to fit it to the hole, it did a thing metal does sometimes when it remembers, turned to its old place like a dog recognizing a path. She held it there a long time, not tightening anything, just letting it make a circle on the plaster where it would have been. The kid took the letter and traced the door with one finger, that careful not touch that still counts as touching. "Leave room on the couch," he said, like a promise. On our way out, the contractor leaned on the newel post and asked how it went the way a midwife might ask how a birth went out in the yard because a cow decided outside was better today. We showed him the letter. He didn't touch it. He said, "We found other hollows," and that word felt right, it felt like a rib cage. He disappeared into that hunched headlamp kind of dark and came back with a tin that had once held something useless, mints or nails, and now held everything. 2 more scalloped edge photographs, June with her glasses turned to coins again, a man in a sweater vest holding a plate of what was absolutely seed cake if sincerity has a shape, and a little notebook the size of a palm. Inside, in pencil, that proud, ordinary pencil, were the beginnings of a catalog. Bag End Library, June had written, and numbered 1 through 12 the editions that lived on the coffee table for winter, not just Tolkien. A cheap paperback of a poet we both love and never admit out loud. A book of folk songs with chords in the margins, I am that we know now because the neighbor with the cello across our hall hummed it last week without noticing. Next to each title was a note, goes better with orange peel. Don't let Gil do the goblin voices, he gets hoarse. Return to Mrs. L's hallway shelf in spring. At the back, under a little drawing of the kettle, a pocket made out of masking tape, and inside that pocket a key, old and bird-boned, with a tag that said round door. It didn't fit anything in the house now, the locks have all been modernized to the kind that give up their secrets to codes, but it fits something we could carry. The knob isn't a hollow that opens, not ours, not this one, but the little box at the bottom of our slipcase is, because my boyfriend made one last month out of his wizardry with cardboard and glue, a false bottom for safekeeping the way you make a nest. He slid the key in beneath the books and it made the smallest sound, like a coin in a fountain someone will find later and call a sign. We put our own thing in the wall because it felt rude to take and not leave. He wrote on the back of our Tuesday schedule in his careful print, and I drew the door again with a hand that doesn't shake as much now. The contractor held the baseboard open with his palm, and we fed the paper into the hollow belly of the house and closed the seam with the same patience you close a book you will open again. We didn't stay our hour. We stayed as long as you stay when you realize you're not a guest but you're not the owner either. You're something in between that a place makes when it wants company. On the walk back, the kid kept the letter flat against his front under his coat like armor. Hazel took my arm in that companionable, old country way and said, "Junie never liked being done. She'd be delighted by an unfinished wall." Back home, the doorknob went in with ceremony, the slipcase breathed like it knows secrets because it does, and we made the kind of tea that tastes like somebody told it a story first. Tuesday came like it always does, like a tide you forget and then remember when your ankles get wet, and now there's a letter on our mantle next to a tape with a voice inside, next to a key that opens nothing and everything, next to a doorknob that turns without needing a door. People keep putting their hands on it when they pass the way you touch a photograph, like a tally mark for belonging. The kids at the cafeteria started drawing the little round door in the corner of their math notes. Their vice principal confiscated one and then came after school and asked if she could listen just to see. She sat on the floor and stayed for 2 chapters and left with seed cake on a napkin, her heels loud in the hall like punctuation. We haven't written anything down that counts as official, but the library asked if we wanted the basement on Tuesdays once the snow turns to that kind of city soup, and I think we might say yes and also no because the answer is always that we'll be where the kettle sings and the door is drawn, whether it's a house with its bones showing or an apartment where a taped-up knob makes a wall into a wish. Leave room on the couch, the letter said. We keep doing that. The couch is getting weirder, more chairs of weird heights elbowed up around it, somebody on the floor, somebody on the arm like a cat. It's all the right shape anyway. Books find their people. Houses find their Tuesdays. We keep turning the same page and somehow it keeps finding a new sentence. The door keeps getting drawn. The kettle keeps being wrong in exactly the right way, and the key at the bottom of the slipcase keeps not fitting anything, which might be the most faithful thing a key can do.